Airspeed Ambassador. The Airspeed AS.57 Ambassador is a British twin-piston-engined airliner that was designed and produced by the British aircraft manufacturer Airspeed Ltd. It was one of the first post-war airliners to be produced. The Ambassador was developed in response to a requirement identified by the Brabazon Committee for a twin-engine short-to-medium-haul airliner as a replacement for the ubiquitous Douglas DC-3. Airspeed assembled a design team in 1943, which initially worked on a smaller proposal powered by Bristol Hercules radial engines. This was quickly superseded by a larger capacity design aimed at better fulfilling the expansion in post-war civil air travel, although several figures doubted Airspeed's projections. While outfitted with the new but conventional Bristol Centaurus radial engines, the Ambassador was designed to accommodate 4 Napier Nomad turbo-compound engines, a then-recent innovation. Its fuselage was compatible with pressurisation, this being an optional feature offered to customers. On 10 July 1947, the first prototype Ambassador conducted its maiden flight. A total of 3 prototypes were built. Early on, British European Airways BA emerged as a key customer for the type, having placed a £3 a million order for in September 1948. Introducing the Ambassador to service in 1951, BA often referred to the aircraft as the Elizabethans, as having been popularized as the planes used for the airline's Elizabethan-class passenger service. However, the type was quickly outperformed by the turboprop-powered Vickers Viscount, with BA opting to withdraw its Ambassadors in 1958. Second-hand aircraft were operated by a range of other airlines, including Dan Air and Northeast Airlines. Despite being produced in relatively small numbers, the Ambassador was operational for longer than had been anticipated by planners. Development. Background. The origins of the Ambassador can be traced back to 1943 and the work of the Brabazon Committee, which sought to define what types of aircraft would be desired by the post-war civil aviation sector. Amongst several other types, the committee developed a requirement for a twin-engine short-to-medium-haul replacement for the Douglas DC-3, known as the Type 2. The British manufacturer Airspeed Ltd was interested in this requirement and established a small design team to work on the project from a dispersed office in Fairmile Manor at Cobham in Surrey in 1943. This effort was headed by ex-de Havilland aeronautical engineer Arthur Hagg, who had joined the company earlier that year. Early concepts revolved around an unpressurized aircraft in the 14.5-ton gross weight class that was powered by a pair of Bristol Hercules radial engines. Work on the endeavor was taken as far as possible without infringing Airspeed's wartime production activity, as the Second World War was still ongoing at this point. In response to changes in planners' preferences, dictating that the interim aircraft be procured so that airliners such as the in-development Ambassador had more development time, thus the design was revised substantially to expand its capacity. By 1944, it was a considerably larger design than the DC-3 it had been envisioned to replace that provided passengers with superior comfort and space. While Airspeed's management believed that post-war demands would demand greater passenger capacities, several figures, including those within the British Overseas Airways Corporation book and the Air Ministry, were pessimistic in their projections. The company also promoted the economics of higher utilization rates and elevated cruise speeds, whereas conventional wisdom amongst airlines was to avoid increasing speeds to reduce fuel consumption. For the Ambassador, Airspeed opted to pursue a cruising altitude of 20,000 ft, relatively high for the era. A comprehensive mock-up was completed by November 1944, largely for promotional purposes, while the projected operating cost figures were released during early 1945. Immediately following the end of the conflict, the British Ministry of Aircraft Production placed an order with the company to produce a pair of prototypes. While the first prototype was to be unpressurized and powered by a pair of Bristol Centaurus radial engines, it was envisioned that the second prototype would feature a reinforced fuselage compatible with pressurisation and a wing that could accommodate 4 Napier Nomad turboprop engines. Several officials, including company chairman Alan Samuel Butler, promoted the adoption of recently developed turboprop propulsion. By the end of 1945, work has commenced on building structural test sections and jigs. Into flight. On 10 July 1947, the first prototype, registered G. Agua, conducted the type's maiden flight flown by Chief Test Pilot George B. S. Arrington. While considered to be a successful first flight, it subsequently underwent a month of alterations, including the deletion of the spring tab, geared tabs being fitted to the outer rudders, and the locking of the inner rudder. A reversible propeller was also installed. During September 1947, the first prototype made its first public display alongside elements of the second prototype, including its cockpit and control system, at the Society of British Aircraft Constructors SBAC show at Radlett. On 22 November 1947, the program received a setback when the prototype was forced to perform a belly landing after the port undercarriage leg failed to deploy due to a loss of hydraulic pressure. This event did not seemingly deter customer confidence, as the newly created operator British European Airways BA continued to openly express their preference for the type, which was solidified during September 1948 in the form of a £3 million order for 20 ambassadors. This support was so impactful that, according to aviation author H. A. Taylor, rival aircraft manufacturer Vickers was close to cancelling development of the Viscount over fears that airlines held a preference for advanced piston-powered airliners over the unfamiliar turboprop. During flight testing, it was found that the aircraft possessed particularly favorable low-speed characteristics. Having been explored in depth beforehand, this was dramatically displayed at the 1948 Farnborough Air Show, becoming the only aircraft in history to perform such an aerial display with one engine out throughout. This was a deliberate choice, with the inactive engine's propeller being feathered prior to taking off and remaining so until after landing. Up until late 1948, the first prototype performed the majority of flight testing. A total of 3 prototypes were constructed for the test program. The second Ambassador, G. Akin, was the first to feature pressurization and was equipped with a full passenger cabin configuration for demonstration flights. This second prototype subsequently was used by the Bristol Aeroplane Company from 1953 for flight testing the Bristol Proteus 705 turbine engine. From March 1958, it was used by Rolls-Royce for test flying the Dart and Tyne turboprops. The third prototype and first Ambassador 2G Alpha was initially used for BA proving trials. Starting in 1955, it also participated in the development trials of the Napier Elan turbine engine. During 1958, intensive simulated airline flying to pave the way for BA Vanguards was performed using 2 Tyne-powered Ambassadors. During the latter stage of development, some issues were uncovered. The wing, which had been designed to induce laminar flow characteristics, was relatively unconventional in its design. Testing revealed that it lacked sufficient strength. Technical assistance was provided by de Havilland, and the issue was proven to be resolved in December 1949. 3 minor accidents during demonstration flights, while causing no serious damage, often delayed testing and did not inspire confidence amongst potential customers. Quantity production of the Ambassador commenced during 1950, leading to the first production standard aircraft, destined for BA performing its first flight on 12 January 1951. Design. The Airspeed Ambassador was an all-metal twin-engine airliner designed to serve short to medium-haul routes. It was considered to be relatively advanced for the era, being a relatively aerodynamically clear aircraft with features such as a high aspect ratio, wing with near laminar flow characteristics, a tricycle undercarriage, a steerable nose wheel, integral fuel tanks, and other recent innovations. Distinctive external features of the Ambassador included its 3 low tail fins and a long pointed nose, it shared something of the character of the larger transcontinental Lockheed Constellation. It possessed a more modern appearance than many of its contemporaries, including the D-3s, Curtiss Commandos, Avro Lancastrians and Vickers Vikings that were common on Europe's shorter airline routes. In a standard configuration, the Ambassador could accommodate a maximum of 47 passengers. Somewhat unusually, its passenger cabin could be either pressurized or not, dependent on the preference of the specific customer. The cabin was designed to minimize the level of noise reaching its passengers. Considerable effort went into soundproofing and general furnishings. Taylor described the Ambassador as being particularly quiet for a piston-engine airliner, although also noting it could not equal the lower noise levels of turboprop-powered airliners such as the Vickers Viscount. It was typically powered by conventional Bristol Centaurus radial engines, although individual aircraft were re-engined with various power plants, including turboprops. In order to achieve a high level of efficiency while cruising, its designers made great efforts to minimize drag. These included the use of a laminar flow wing section, although structural features for wing construction, propeller slipstream over the inner wing and increasing skin roughness with service were amongst several factors that reduced the optimistic NACA section's performance when measured in a wind tunnel. The engine nacelles were initially designed with inwardly opening louvers for exhaust gases and cooling air rather than the usual outwardly opening gills. However, these proved inadequate for cooling the engine, thus the gills were reinstated. Engine outclimb performance was enhanced by being able to feather the propeller using a zero-torque signal from the engine. Operational history. During 1952, British European Airways BA introduced the first of its 20-strong fleet of Ambassadors to revenue service. The airline referred to them as the Elizabethan class in honor of the newly crowned Queen Elizabeth II. The type had been originally intended to be introduced during the previous year, but this was delayed on account of development issues. By May 1951, intense proving trials of the Ambassador were being conducted by a joint team of Airspeed and BA employees, while official BA training commenced in August of that year. The flagship of BA fleet was G. Elson, appropriately named Armée Elizabethan. The first Elizabethan scheduled flight was from Heathrow to Paris Le Bourget on 13 March 1952. The type was later across the airline's key UK routes. According to Taylor, the Ambassador gave BA a competitive edge over all of its rivals on account of its performance. By December 1955, however, it was quickly found that the rival Vickers Viscount, which had been introduced in 1953, was even more popular than the Ambassador with BA passengers. Rival airlines, such as Air France, had also quickly introduced the Viscount, and thus held an advantage over BA Elizabethan service. Accordingly, the airline decided to withdraw the type despite its relative youth. Thus, the final scheduled service to be performed by BA was operated on 30 July 1958. Further sales of the Ambassador were not achieved. Aviation authors Bill Gunston and Peter Masefield claimed that this lack of success ought to be largely attributed to attitudes within de Havilland's management following its takeover of Airspeed in 1951. They allegedly preferred to use Airspeed's factory at Christchurch Airfield to produce military jets designed by de Havilland. One example of de Havilland's undermining of potential sales was the recall of the sales director to de Havilland's headquarters at Hatfield Aerodrome, Hertfordshire, England, from Australia, despite being allegedly on the verge securing an order from Trans-Australia Airlines for 12 Ambassadors. Taylor observed that prospective customers were often skeptical that Airspeed, being a relatively small company, could be relied upon for technical support and components. Following the type's disposal by BA, second-hand Ambassadors helped to establish the scheduled and charter flight operations of Dan Air, an important airline in the development of the package holiday. The type was also used in the UK by Autair and BK's Air Transport. Second-hand Ambassadors were also flown for short periods by several airlines, including Butler Air Transport Australia, Globe Air Switzerland, and Narna Fly Norway. Multiple entities, such as Royal Dutch Shell and the Royal Jordanian Air Force, also procured ambassadors for their own private purposes. The initial popularity of the Ambassador, with its pressurized cabin and good soundproofing, was soon eclipsed by the arrival of turboprop-powered aircraft such as the Vickers Viscount and, some years later, the Lockheed Electra, which featured more reliable engines and faster speeds. The coming of turboprops and the dawning of the jet age had caused the Ambassador to quickly fall out of favor. Variants: AS-57, Ambassador 1, prototype aircraft with Bristol Centaurus 130 engines, 2 built. AS-57, Ambassador 2, production version with Bristol Centaurus 661 engines, 21 built including the production prototype. Projects: AS-59, Ambassador Roman 2, project for either a twin-engined variant with Bristol Proteus or Bristol Theseus engines, or a four-engined variant with Napier Nomads or Rolls-Royce Darts. From the first prototypes, the Ambassador's wing had been stressed for 4 Nomad turboprops, but no four-engined variant flew. AS-60, Ayrshire C1, proposed variant to meet Air Ministry Specification C-13/45 for a medium-range military transport with a rear fuselage loading ramp. 10 were ordered in October 1946, but were not built. After a review of the design's projected performance produced figures lower than the Air Ministry's requirements. AS-64, proposed military transport variant for the Royal Air Force to meet Air Ministry Specification C-26/43, not built. AS-66, proposed civil freighter variant. AS-67, proposed civil freighter variant. Accidents and incidents: 8 April 1955, GMAB Sir Francis Bacon of British European Airways was damaged beyond repair in a forced landing southwest of Dusseldorf, Germany. This aircraft had often been used by the Queen and Prince Philip when traveling to Europe in the early 1950s. 6 February 1958, Gilles Lord Burghley, also of BA, in what became known as the Munich Air Disaster, crashed on takeoff after a refueling stop at Munich while operating a charter flight from Belgrade, Yugoslavia to Manchester, England. This crash received tremendous public attention in the UK as it involved team members and staff of Manchester United Football Club, together with representatives of the national press. 23 of the 44 people on the plane died as a result of their injuries in the crash, including 8 Manchester United players. The investigation eventually focused on runway slush adversely affecting the speed of the plane as it attempted to take off. 14 April 1966, GLS of Dan Air was damaged beyond repair when landing at Beauvais, France. 14 September 1967, GLS of Air was damaged beyond repair when landing at Luton Airport, UK. The aircraft overran the runway and ended up in soft clay. 3 July 1968, GMAD of BKS Air Transport crashed at London Heathrow Airport. All but 2 of its crew, as well as several horses which were being transported, and their grooms, were killed. A parked Trident airliner was damaged beyond repair, GARPed, and another Trident had its tail torn off before the airliner hit terminal buildings and came to rest. The accident was found to have been caused by the failure of a flap actuating rod in the Ambassador's port left wing. Coincidentally, the Trident which suffered the damaged tail GRP was subsequently repaired and later involved in an unconnected fatal accident in June 1972. 30 September 1968, GMAG of Dan Air was damaged beyond repair in a wheels-up landing at Manston, United Kingdom. Operators: civil operators. Australia Butler Air Transport operated 3 different aircraft. Norway Narnafly proposed to operate 2 aircraft, but they never entered service. New Zealand South Seas Airways bought 1 aircraft, but failed to gain an operator's license and it was never delivered to New Zealand. Switzerland Globe Air operated 3 different aircraft. United Kingdom Otter International Airways operated 3 different aircraft. BKS Air Transport operated 3 different aircraft. British European Airways operated 20 different aircraft. Dan Air operated 7 different aircraft. Deccan Navigator Company 1 aircraft. Napier, Rolls-Royce, Shell Aviation Limited 2 aircraft. Military operators: Jordan Royal Jordanian Air Force operated 3 former British European Airways aircraft, first one delivered in 1959. Moroccan Royal Flight aircraft on display: 1 Elizabethan Christopher Marlowe G. Olzo, C/and 5226, survives, having undergone major restoration by the Duxford Aviation Society at the Imperial War Museum, Duxford near Cambridge. The restoration was completed in April 2013 and the aircraft is presently part of the Duxford collection. Specifications: data from Airspeed aircraft since 1931, British civil aircraft since 1919, Volume 1, General characteristics: crew 3, capacity up to 60 passengers, length 81 ft 25 m, wingspan 115 ft 35 m, height 18 ft 4 in 5.59 m, wing area 1200 sq-ft 110 in 2, aspect ratio 11:1, airfoil root NACA tip, NACA, empty weight 35,884 lb, 16,277 kg, max takeoff weight 52,000 lb, 23,537 kg, fuel capacity 1,000 imp gal, 1,200 US gal, 4,500 L and 2 integral wing tanks with provision for 600 imp gal, 720 US gal, 2,700 L and 2 center section bag tanks. Power plant 2X Bristol Centaurus 661 18-cylinder air-cooled sleeve valve piston engines, 2625 HB 1957 kW each. Performance: maximum speed 312 mph, 502 km/h, 271 kN at 75% power with 11,650 lb, 5,280 kg payload. Cruise speed 300 mph, 480 km/h, 260 kN at 20,000 ft, 6,100 m at 50,000 lb, 23,000 kg, 279 mph, 242 kN, 449 km/h at 60% power. Range 720 mi, 1160 km, 630 nmi with 11,650 lb, 5,280 kg payload and no reserve. 1560 mi, 1360 nmi, 2510 km with 7,900 lb, 3,600 kg payload. Max fuel at 280 mph, 240 kN, 450 km/h, 1950 mi, 1690 nmi, 3,140 km with 7,900 lb, 3,600 kg payload. Max fuel at 220 mph, 190 kN, 350 km/h. Rate of climb 1520 ft/min, 7.7 m/s at 5,000 ft, 1,500 m at maximum weight. Rate of climb on one engine 420 ft/min, 130 m/min after takeoff at maximum weight 360 ft/min, 110 m/min at 5,000 ft, 1,500 m at maximum weight. Wing loading 43.3 lb/sq-ft, 211 kg/m2 at 52,000 lb, 24,000 kg. Power/mass 0.18B/LB 0.16 kW/kg at 52,000 lb 24,000 kg. Takeoff distance to 50 ft 15 M 270 ft 1000 M at maximum TIA weight. Takeoff distance to 50 ft 15 M1 engine 4950 ft 1510 M at maximum TIA weight. Landing distance from 50 ft 15 M 2565 ft 782 M at max landing weight